So how many of you feel you don't have a story? A story that's worth sharing, a story that's interesting, a story that's your own and that you're proud of. How many of you feel you don't have that? Kindly raise your hands if you feel you don't have a story. Quite a few. So before we move on, and I tell you about the crux of storytelling, and I make you all believe that we all are storytellers and that we all have stories, let me tell you a story. Year 1994. In a very small district of Maharashtra, Jalgaon, there was this man who was in his early 20s who was working day and night to provide for his family. And mind you, this man was supremely handsome and charming, much like apne zamane ka Kishore Kumar. And guys, you know what the irony is? His name was Kishore Kumar. So this guy married a girl from another small town in Maharashtra, Amravati. The girl was again in her early 20s. She was passionately working towards helping her dad in her business. And mind you, this girl was supremely stunning and gorgeous, much like apne zamane ki Meena Kumari. And guys, you know what the irony is? Her name was Meena Kumari. So in the year 1995, this beautiful couple gave birth to a small baby girl, Nancy. Nancy grew old, spending most of her time with her neighbor's daughter, Ankita. Nancy and Ankita played all day long. They used to do stuff like kitchen set और घर घर खेलते थे, यही सब था. But anyway, while growing up, something terrible and unfortunate happened. Ankita joined preschool. And now she was busy during her daytime. And Nancy, being the older one, she was sad that she wasn't able to play with Ankita. This is Nancy, and these both are crying because they were not able to play with each other, and their parents did not allow them to play together because now Nancy was introduced to this new world of environmental studies. And Ankita had to learn and study 1, 2, 3, 4 and ABCD, guys. We all know how important it is. Yeah? So now Nancy cried and cribbed, requesting her parents to let her play with Ankita. And when everything went downside, she decided that she'd take a much bolder step. She started demanding her own little sister. Don't ask me how, but Nancy somehow figured out that her parents would be able to do that for her. Okay? So now she started crying and crying and crying. She cried for 8 whole months, requesting and demanding her own little sister. And guess what? अगर किसी चीज को शिद्दत से चाहो तो पूरी कायनात उसे तुमसे मिलाने की साजिश में लग जाती है. That's what happened. Her parents decided to have another child. And 8.5 years after Nancy, in the year 2004, they were blessed with a baby boy. But this was not a part of Nancy's plan. She looked at this baby boy and she was like, ये वाला अलग क्यों है इससे? मुझे ये नहीं चाहिए. इसको return कर दो. But you cannot explain that to someone who's in 3rd standard. But yeah, that's how I came into this world as a rather demanded child. And that's how I developed this cute love-hate relationship with my sister, Nancy. We all have a story. You sitting here with 299 others listening to me is also a story. Me addressing the 300 of you is also a story. You waking up in the morning and brushing your teeth is also a story. And you asking for a pencil to your childhood crush is also a story. कहानियां हम सबके पास है. मेरी भी एक कहानी है, तुम्हारी भी एक कहानी है. पर फर्क बस इतना ही है कि कोई कह पाता है और कोई नहीं कह पाता है. जैसे अभी तुम्हें लग रहा होगा मैं उनमें से हूं जो अपनी कहानी कह पाता है, जो अपनी बात रख पाता है, पर मैं उनमें था नहीं, जैसे कि आज तुम नहीं हो. मेरी भी एक कहानी है, a story of how I made it from the audience to the stage. And guys, everything we feel, we observe, and we experience are stories. This is me, but oh no, wrong picture. Oh, that's me. Yeah, see? So everything we feel, observe, and experience is either a story or has a story attached to it. Clear? So what stories do is, stories can create value, Stories can spark a connection, and stories can instill an emotion. For example, what do you think this is? A leaf, maybe? So for the people who are sitting at the back, I have a medium-sized green leaf in my hand, as you can see on the presentation as well. So but first, let's do this. I give you 7 seconds to make your observations, perspectives, and opinions about this leaf. You can think of anything. Okay, so someone from the second row might be thinking, this is a leaf. Ashu Bhai would be thinking, this is a green leaf. Aditya, the backbencher, is thinking, this is a medium-sized green leaf. He just copied me. But anyway, someone would have let their imaginations run wild and they would say, this is a green leaf from a mango tree. And what if I ask you this question? I'll crush this and throw it into the dustbin. Would it matter to you? Would it create any significant impact in your life? Does this create or subtract any value if I crush this leaf and throw it into the dustbin? Probably not. But that's not the case for me. So this last week, on 2nd of March, I was in this beautiful valley of Jibi, Himachal Pradesh. It's a beautiful village in the Kullu district. And I was there hosting 13 strangers from 13 different states for the very first time on my own, without the help of any travel agency, without the help of any trek guide or a trip captain. I was the whole and soul of this trip. And I took them for the hike of the Jalori Pass. And trust me, as we were gradually progressing towards the Jalori Pass, to the top of Jalori Pass, the weather started testing us. And I kid you not, there was snow till my knee. And I found it difficult to walk, much like all 13 of them. And that's when this little thread of self-doubt came into my mind. And slowly, I started doubting that what if I don't make it to the top? What if even one of us doesn't make it to the top? How would I feel? I'd feel like a complete stranger. The first trip that I was hosting on my own is a complete disaster. And slowly, this little thread of self-doubt turned into this gigantic ball. And I started questioning everything from my past and all the future plans that I had for the future. So that's when I took a step aside and I waited, because I wanted a sign, a signal from God or the energy above. I stepped aside, I took a pause for 5 seconds, I closed my eyes, I joined my hands, and I prayed to God that please give me a signal, a sign that would say that should I move forward or should we all head back? And I also wanted the answers of all the past decisions that I've made in my life and on all the future plans that I had for myself and the 13 of us. So I'm not making this up. Trust me, guys. And just 3 seconds later, as I opened my eye and I put the next step forward, a big chunk of snow fell right onto my head from the tree above. And I was like, what an ugly day to be alive. This is the sign. We should head back. And everything that I had for my future will just go to drain. But just when I was rubbing my head, because there was too much snow in my jacket, I was rubbing it out, I found this leaf. This leaf, which had fallen from the pressure of snow from the tree. This was lush, green, and crisp. And I took this as a signal to move forward, because green means go. We all know that. So I thought God is giving me a signal that we should go forward and we should not head back. And whatever I've been doing in my life makes sense, and that the future will also be great. So that's what we did. 13 of us went to the top of Jalori Pass. And trust me, we experienced the best sunset of our entire lives. And while we were there, these 13 strangers from 13 different states became a family. Just because we trusted this leaf. So now if I ask you the same question, I'll crush this leaf and throw it into the dustbin. Would you have the same reaction? Do you have the same reaction? Does this leaf now feel more valuable to you? Because now what we have done here is, we have created a connection with this leaf. And suddenly, by just adding a simple story to this leaf, the value, the connection, the emotion with this leaf is now much higher. So what storytelling does is that it helps us induce the right hormones into our audience and makes them perceive us or anything in the way we want. So now during the initial half of the conversation, we all have understood that we all are storytellers and that we all have stories. But the real question is, how do we become a better storyteller? So now, according to me, the only thing that's stopping you from becoming a better storyteller is self-confidence. There's this little lack, little कमी है अपने को self-confidence की, that you might feel कि we are not able to tell our stories out loud or anything for that matter. But for me, self-confidence does not exist. Because for me, self-confidence is as easy as the byproduct of self-awareness. So for me, self-awareness is the thing we should be working on. Because self-awareness के साथ self-confidence आएगा, and self-confidence is just a byproduct of self-awareness. The better you know yourself, the more confident you are on yourself. अगर विराट कोहली को पता है कि कवर ड्राइव पे रन आएंगे, तो वो कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं, अवेयरनेस फर्स्ट है. That's what we also have to do. And for me, self-awareness is again 3 very simple things. Where you are right now, listening to me in the hall, me standing on the stage. This is the present us. You should know your past. The day you were born till this very present day. Jao, ask your friends, ask your family, ask your parents, ask your grandparents, and if you're lucky enough, ask your great-grandparents that what was that one thing that made you cry? What was that one thing that made you excited? What chocolate did you like when you were a kid? When was the first time you failed an exam? And how did you feel back then? What is that one thing that gives you the immense joy of life? Ask all these questions because all these are stories that are worth telling. The next thing you have to do is you have to look at the future. I'm not asking you to see yourself 5 years down the lane, but I'm asking, what would you eat for breakfast tomorrow? What kind of coffee would you like tomorrow? And where do you see yourself in the next 3 months, maybe? And how will you reach there? The bridge from the present to the future is also as important as having a story. So what do you have to do? Kal subah ka breakfast, will I order in? Will I go out? Will my mom make it or will I make it? Is the bridge of how you reach the future. The next thing you got to do is gather stories and observe the environment. So now, when you ask your parents, your grandparents, your friends that what did you like and all sorts of stories, they don't remember it exactly. The details are missing. They just have a vague or a rough idea, a blurred vision of what you like or what you did not like. But now what you got to do is you got to gather stories. So the easiest way to do is talk to people, observe the environment, gather stories and borrow it from them. When you listen to people and you borrow their stories and you take it into your life, it's difficult to remember. But what you got to do, you got to document them. Because once we are borrowing stories from others, they are not our own. Our mind is only trained to remember the stories that are our own. But when you're gathering stories, when you're observing the environment, document them so that you don't miss out on the details. So what details do is that it helps the audience visualize and imagine better. The situation, the Jibhi ki valley, the trek, you all imagined that, right? So now when you've gathered stories, you start documenting them, and what you do is you note down the details because details will help you make a better imagination in your audience's mind. The most important part. To be a good teller of stories, you have to become a good listener of stories first. So try out. Watch great movies, listen to great music, appreciate art, have your own takeaways from art, listen to great storytellers, great impactful people, influential people, and see how they are telling their stories. Be a good listener first. And then when you have your own takeaway, every time you appreciate art, creativity, or a story, you will have your own. The next thing is pretty easy. Besharam ban jao aur apni kahani keh do. There's no easier way to tell you to speak than to speak. तुम्हें मैं बोलना नहीं सिखा सकता. The only thing you can do is speak. There are no 3 tips or tricks to better speaking. It's just speaking. For example, I want to ask you a question. What would you rather be, underconfident or overconfident? People who feel they would rather be underconfident, raise your hands. No one. People who feel they would rather be overconfident, raise your hands. So the beautiful part about overconfidence is that there's failure, but there's learning. So what overconfidence does to you is that you will fail. I guarantee you failure when you're overconfident, but I also guarantee you learning while you're overconfident. You might not reach 10 when you're overconfident, but you reach 1. But the sad thing about underconfidence is that you are at ground zero at all times. There's no learning, there's no failure, and you don't take step forward. So बेशरम बनो, अपनी कहानी कह दो. Because जब मैंने भी अपनी कहानी कही थी ना, I was laughed at. I was laughed by 28 people precisely. These were amongst my family, my friends, my relatives, colleagues, and friends, cousins. इनको कोई भी पूछता था, तुम्हारा दोस्त है, तुम इसको जानते हो? Is this one of you? They said, no. सब लोग आके यही कहते थे कि यार ये क्या कर रहे हैं, वीडियो बनाने से क्या होगा? This was the first time I posted a video on YouTube. I was telling my story to the people on the internet because I did not feel heard at my place. I posted my first ever YouTube video, which is called Who is Tanmay Mandhan? And I told my story out loud. I got 83 views. And when I uploaded and I went out 2 days later, I got 84 taunts. That why are you doing this? Does this make any sense? This won't take you anywhere. But there was learning, there was failure, and I took a step forward. That's all that mattered. The next thing you got to do, when you have stories that you have borrowed from other people, they are not your own. But जब तुम उन्हें अपने नजरिए से बताओगे, when you tell these stories from your own perspective, ये कहानियां तुम्हारी है, and all these stories are now your own. So what do? You personalize them. For example, Kali, someone was telling me that how he went to Spiti, Himachal Pradesh, and while he was out, he took a torch at 2 a.m. and he was roaming outside in the wild. And he saw something in the bush and he came running back. But when I tell this story to you, it was 2 a.m. We were in the tents in the Kaza district of Spiti. And everyone from my group had fallen asleep. But I wasn't able to sleep. So I took this torch and I went out into the wild. So now, while I was exploring the wilderness, my torch suddenly started flickering. And then I got a bit scared. And then instantly, when I turned around, I saw something in the bush. I did not turn back. I followed it. And then I saw a snow leopard. And that's how I came back to the tent and told the story to everyone. Story personalize kar lo. What would you do if you would have been in the similar situation? People don't want to listen to sidekicks. Side movie characters के बारे में किसी को नहीं सुनना. Everyone wants to know that how you were the whole and soul of the trip and you led from the front and you helped 13 people reach the top. Make the story your own, put your own perspective, and be the hero of your own story. The next thing, now, when we are more aware about the stories that are happening around us, we are more observant, more vigilant. We'll start to observe the stories that are happening in our life as well. So what do? The same thing. We start documenting it and journaling it instantly because we don't want to miss out on the details because the details matter. Write down the phrase, what someone said, the characters, the dialogues, everything would eventually make sense. Note down the story, document it, and personalize it. Make it your own. The next thing, too many details are again boring. अगर मैं स्पीति की कहानी बता रहा हूँ तो I wouldn't have told you कि how I left from Delhi in a bus and then I took a tempo from some other place. That would have been boring. Knowing the details is also very important. When you're starting out, how do you know what details matter and what not? So you test out the story in front of 10 different people. And that's when you know that this detail is working. ये वाली detail पे ये smile कर रहा है, ये वाली detail पे ये हंसा, ये वाली detail पे ये ज़्यादा intrigued होके सुन रहा है, ज़्यादा interest से सुन रहा है. That means कि these details are good. Someone who's losing interest on a particular detail, you tweak it, because that's what we do. That's what good storytellers do. You remove the detail or you tweak it according to your audience. Too many details are boring, but they are important. We need to find a balance. The next thing, relevancy makes a lot of difference. So we have to be relevant at all times. I cannot tell my manager how I took 13 strangers on a trip and we reached the top of the Jalori Pass. But I'd rather tell him that how, amongst these 13 people, there was this one guy who was working in Amazon at a 40 lakhs per annum job. And he was doing something very similar to what I'm doing for you, but he was doing it much better and he was doing it much faster. He was more experienced and efficient. This story would suddenly interest my manager. Oh, what was he doing? Kya kar raha tha? Where can we improve? So relevancy will matter. And now I'm at a better position to negotiate my salary because now I've learned it from him. And he would feel कि यार ये तो ट्रिप पे था पर भी ऑफिस के बारे में सोच रहा है. So that's where you can use the relevant stories. Now, there are 4 elements to becoming a better storyteller. So the first one is narration. Everything is a part of narration. My body language, my hand movement, the PPT that's going on at the back, and the way I'm choosing my words, all are a part of narration. So you have to focus on the narration. What environment you create while you're narrating also makes a lot of difference. And iske baad, the most beautiful thing I've come across as a storyteller is voice modulation. Voice modulation is the most beautiful thing you can ever learn about storytelling. With voice modulation, you can put out your ideas into the person's mind, into your audience's mind, the way you want. अब मैं ये similar चीज़ hype up भी बोल सकता था. Your emotions would also be that way. Your hormones would also play that way. But for example, I want you to listen to something very peacefully. I'll tone down. I'll use the tonality. I'll say something that relaxes you, calms you. So that's where voice modulation would help you gather the attention of your audience and put out the message. The most interesting thing, humor. If anyone comes up and tells you that your story is boring without humor, just slap them. It's not. Humor is not necessary. Because what humor does is, it creates a disconnect with the story. But the beautiful part about humor is that if done in the perfect way and the subtle way, it also helps you get the attention back of the audience immediately. For example, the Nancy knowing that her parents can do it for her. You felt disconnected. We all smiled. We all shared a laugh. But then, the next instant, you were immediately connected to the story again. So humor, when done and when added in perfect and precise amounts, will enhance your level of storytelling and your story as well. The last thing, emotion. The emotion with which you tell your story, the compassion with which you tell your story, is how the audience will also receive it. If I tell you my breakup story that I'm excited, oh, I was there for 2 years, man. It felt like I was घुटन सी महसूस हो रही थी उसके साथ. Now I feel so much more free. So what would be your reaction? Oh, good for you. On to the next one, buddy. So you're also more excited because I am showing the emotion that I am excited. But what if I tell you the similar story when I'm sad? We were there for 2 years and everything was going good. But somehow she decided to break it off. I don't know what I did, but something that I said made her sad. Now suddenly your reaction to this story and this emotion is different. You feel more sympathetic towards me. You'll react in a certain way. You probably would say stuff like, "Koi baat nahi, hota hai." You'll find someone better. It's time to move on. I just know one thing, that all I'll take away from this day is a story, and everything you will take home from today, this entire TED event, is also a story. Because at the end, it's not the degree, it's not a job, it's not a milestone that defines you. It's the stories you choose to live. Thank you.